Welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, Nove 718, and you are rocking with us on episode 2 of Just the Talk, where we talk about movies first and everything else that follows after it, from constructive criticisms, ideas. This is where I could really talk about scoops without having to go out of my way to research it, because I just want to get into the conversation of these ideas that are actually floating out there for those that's inside, on the inside of things, and there's plenty of channels out here that do scoops, and some of my scoops will definitely come from Sil Abdul Inc. that spoke on it, because Mikey Sutton is one of his partners on his channel, and he's been bringing a lot of information and bringing the heat that, if you follow their channel, which I suggest you do, you will be in the know of what's the conversation that's going on, and you will jump into the talk very well. And that's what this part of the channel is about. It's just the talk, unfiltered talk, where I could go off the top and we could talk about anything off the cuff, have some real good fun, and be adults about it. And when I say adult fun, I mean, we're not here to call names and get into too much shenanigans, because like we're online talking about movies, so I don't understand the necessity for us to need to go that route. But what we can do is go back and forth and debate some concepts and ideas about film that a lot of people gravitate to, and we can actually break it down and really figure it out how we feel about it, or how I feel about it. And you could jump in the comments and get into the talk and let me know how you guys feel about what you've heard, etc. And without further ado, I just saw Spider-Man and it's out. I can't talk about it, but it's out. And I got a chance to see it, and no spoilers, but I do want to talk about its success. Then I want us also to really have a conversation about what's been going on with Batman, the Snyderverse, Flash, all of that. Next up on the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks, just to talk. Let's do it. And we are back. And Spider-Man. They said about in under 2 weeks made $1 billion already. And I didn't see it coming. I'll be honest with you, didn't see it coming. I knew it was going to be extremely successful with the pandemic in mind. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that it made $1 billion with the pandemic in mind says a lot to the film, and how successful it could have been had this been post-COVID. But let me be very clear on this. Post the vid, is it possible because of the vid, we've been anticipating it a lot more, and I think that also helped swell up anticipation for, and with the ideas that's been out there about, what people were saying, and so-called leaks, if they were leaks and whatnot, everything that people were talking, and all the conversation about who could show up and yada yada yada, I think that bolstered the community to really want to run out and see it and sell it to other people that might just be the uninitiated, but really are interested in Spider-Man and what Marvel is doing. And I think that you gotta tip your hat to what Marvel did. They put together a film that was able to weave a lot of emotional value while still allowing Tom Holland to be Spider-Man. And the way it ends is what I was always looking for with Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? Less said about that, the better. But how it ends is the direction that I want to see Spider-Man go, especially since now that he's in his senior year, about to leave for college, and it's possible that when we see Spider-Man again, I don't know how many years they'll age him up. Will he be his second year high school of college, or his first year? Will we kind of get to know what's been going on with him all the way up to that point? The way they set it up was well done, well intentioned for the business acumen. There's a lot of things that go outside of Spider-Man lore for me as a big purist that I could get annoyed with. But I wasn't mad because yo, this is the Marvel Universe rendition of it. We've had other renditions of Spider-Man, and unfortunately, to boot Spider-Man up the way they did, they wanted to start him from the very beginning of his career, and he's in the world where superheroes exist. So they did a lot of accommodations and modifications to allow for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to have the best opportunity of success while telling a story that is still Spider-Man, even though a lot of details have been moved to the side because they wanted to do something different, something new, something fresh. Everybody been complaining about, you're tired of seeing origins, which I don't know how people get an attitude like that. It's not like that came from Batman. And to be honest, and if I want to just sidetrack real quick, that 5 minute, not even 5 minute quick overview of a dream sequence of this Batman really got people annoyed. I never understood that. It wasn't even that long. The film wasn't about Ben Affleck's Batman. It was to make sure that we could make a clear distinction and separation between the films you've seen before and this Batman, which makes sense because at some point people forget they were using the Wayne logo from the previous Batman, Chris Nolan's. The reason why is because the aim was to try to get Christian Bale into this film. Now they moved on, and I always told people this where the concept of an older Batman, because remember in that movie he was gone for 10 years and popped back an older Batman with the same light gray hair on the side. So they was always kind of hinting that was the intention, but where they ended up was to make sure and ensure that this is a separate Batman, keep the other Batman that preceded that contained in its own universe, so we don't confuse the audience, because at that time they never was interested in all these different types of Batman films coming out being their blockbusters, because those blockbusters you want to invest a lot in it, and the one thing you don't want to do is splinter the audience and then you lose out on money because people want to run for this Batman, so it might change up the energy of how you try to sell these characters. That being said, now, to bring it all the way back, I get the necessity to tweak a lot of the origins, because sometimes the origins of a lot of these characters were written back in a long time, so some of the concepts can be a little outdated and a little muddled by way of where our technology stands today as the way it did before. So certain things won't work, like Superman with, like, no one noticed who Superman is when everybody has like a legit camera on their phone. Like, we can't do that no more. We can't play with that. I think that's one of the reasons why they killed Superman and took him off the board. But we'll get less said about that right now, the better. I really want to focus on Spider-Man. Get a habit of going off, so I'm doing my best to stay on it. But the ideas and the concepts that went into trying to rejuvenate this character, borrowing from legit comic book sources, people seem to forget that at the end of the day they was able to put together a good film that everyone could enjoy and really gravitate towards. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are looking for, that special quality that makes everyone want to go towards it. Now, to be fair, there's other films that was out there that I gravitated towards that a lot of people didn't when it came out. Now people want to gravitate towards it now. Another day for another conversation. But there's a lot to be said about fan appeal and every fan just wanting to latch on to different fandoms for a lot of reasons, too, a lot of personal reasons and things in that nature that would make a lot of studios a little hesitant about how they proceed with these stories. So they have to be very careful to interweave it the proper way and with respect to the way the business is. People got to remember, they're still doing business. And there was a time when you had to be very careful about how you utilize your IP. You don't want to have like several different Batmans going on at the time, because then people would say, well, I could watch the TV live action when it's set for free as opposed to watching this 2-hour film. But I think that we're learning that the fans have grown as well and been a little bit more sophisticated in terms of how they take in their media. So I think there's a lot to be said on both sides of the wagon. I think a lot of people forget that there's a business acumen towards it. They can't just give what the fans want, quote unquote, like this shit got like this shit gotta pay bills. Like, people add these films up. People look for it. Now, we can all say there's money in it, but do we really know? Especially if you want to look at prior times. Don't get me wrong, I still believe that you need innovation to get us up out of old school thinking, so we could try new things, so we could explore and see, is this a finite rule, or maybe the rule is now up for revisitation because now the customer is no longer the same. Everybody has small mini fandoms, and you can find them online by following certain hashtags, certain environments where you can feel comfortable in all these safe spaces and all that rhetoric, where you can just dialogue with people that talk about the same thing. Or if you're one of those people that look for echo chambers, you can go off and listen to people like yourself go back and forth all day long. Or we also know there's a segment that likes to travel hashtags more to spike the ball and create beefs and stuff like that, trolling. It is what it is. This is part of the world we live in. So now adults that haven't grown up with this type of media from young, they're out the loop on certain things about how these kids are gravitating towards the media now. And I think this exponentially shows in $9 billion, well, it's not been $9 billion, and I think they said in 9 days it made $1 billion, but let's just say in under 2 weeks it already hit $1 billion. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is before China, and this is before a lot of other things. So I think that we do need to clap it up for No Way Home, for what they did, the achievement, and what they really try to do with that film. I really do appreciate it. The little kid in me was smiling ear to ear. Like, I might have looked like a total big ass kid. You feel me? And I loved every minute of it. You know, there's certain things I could go in on, but I don't want to do that. There's certain things that I could kind of tiff about, but it's the nitpicks. You know, I'm not here to really nitpick it. But I'd be honest if I didn't notice certain things that I was like, oh, I don't know, don't do too much of that. But at the same time, I really enjoyed it. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed what they tried to do and what they did achieve in bringing Spider-Man No Way Home to the screen and creating it in such a manner in which that they were able to successfully deal with the business while also giving a great embrace to everything that is Spider-Man. You know, I will say one thing though. I didn't see Stan Lee, and I thought that was sacrilege. If you taped a lot of Stan Lee's appearances, this was the one that we needed to see Stan Lee in. I really feel like that was a big missed opportunity unless I missed it. I don't care if there's just a photo of him on the wall and they just called him Uncle Ben. I just wanted to see, it would have been nice to see Stan Lee show up in this film because I think he would have really loved it. Now, moving right along, I do want to talk a little bit about what's going on with The Flash. Let's go into The Flash. And we'll ducktail into Batman. Because me personally, all the stories that I'm hearing about The Flash, I get how reticent people are because it does sound like it could be a jumbled mess. Like they're trying to juggle way too much. And we've seen a lot of films try to do that and drop the ball damn near all the time. And even some that I felt handled it well. If you look at other census, at least at the period when I was with it, a lot of people didn't like it. And you have to go with how the wave goes sometimes. But also, most importantly, what business people will do is they're going to follow the money. And their expectations, how much they put into the budget. And then they're going to pair that up with what's going on in the game today and why we haven't succeeded. And then it's going to make them look at Marvel and want to take a page out of their book. And then start Marvelizing these characters. And once they started doing that, Wonder Woman 84, that was their Disney movie. It didn't work. I'm not gonna lie. Aquaman 1 was a Disney movie, and it worked. Billy Goat. We can't stress it enough. We have to be honest when we approach this and we talk about it, because I think that a lot of times we forget what came before because we want to get to what's going on now. And especially when it comes to anything that's Zack Snyder, sorry to say, you're gonna have to go back to the beginning to understand. So when we get to a certain place, you can have a certain level of understanding, and then you can make your decision on which side you go on. Now, me personally, I try not to make this about politics, but politics has been ingested in our media, so we have to discuss it because that's the thing that everyone is discussing. But for me, I want to get to the storytelling and the ideas and concepts about it. And if it leads us to the politics of it, yeah, let's go talk about it. Let's explore it. Let's call that shit out and say that wasn't needed in the story because now it's so much on the nose. And I understand you wanted to tackle this, but if you see the energy around it and you can't find a better way to spoon feed that without it being obviously wagging their finger based on what's current topics right now, then you need to leave yourself out of it. Leave yourself out of it and do a lot better with coding your film for metaphors for other things so that you can get the point across. The moment you tell people, oh wow, this is what it's about, it's more what people are calling virtue signaling. Instead of doing the film justice so other people could look and say, hey, I see what you was trying to do, and then we could talk about it with the creators. If the creators then say, hey, this is not representative of what we're trying to achieve, then we can go down that direction. And I think that's what we're not doing enough of. And I think we're starting to mirror the same politics, at least fandom is, that a lot of people say they deny and don't want to deal with. And if that's the case, then why are we engaging in it? All we're doing is creating the same atmosphere that we say that we're fighting against. And it's not helping nor selling the brand of fandom. It's outside of fandom. It's almost like you want to make this a debate thing. And I'm okay with the debates, but then let's just say this is a debate channel and we debate about movies and movie politics and all that stuff. Then go that direction. But then the moment you start doing that, you open yourself up to the critique that you have for other YouTubers as what people would call grifting, because we've used the term so much that it's starting to lose weight. Because in a way, we're all trying to find a way to monetize our channels, whether it's through the sincere donations of our audiences, of which I have none. No disrespect to the 10 people that subscribed, real shit, because it gives me something to do. But also to get your voice out there so you can stir the pot of fandom and inject a certain level that everybody feels that fandom is lacking. That's the reason why we create these channels. There's a great YouTuber that says that fandom could benefit from a lot of participants doing it out of love first, as opposed to going in with the attitude of I want to make money. Because it's a channel that a lot of people in certain sectors do not like, but he talks about it. And he says a lot of fans call up and say, hey, how do I be successful and get, that's all they care about. He says, yo, if that's what you're doing, don't do this. This ain't supposed to be something you do for success. You know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of times you ever really pay attention to the same YouTubers that argue against politics and all of that, they tend to always talk about people's views. If they shooting shots at other YouTubers, they start with how much views they get and basically their influence. I'm not saying it's not worth the conversation to pretend into their arguments, but I'm saying the fact that you're watching and we're closely pocket watching for their relevance, that means that you're doing the same thing too. You're working the algorithms just the same like everyone else, and that's no shade, that's no insult, that's just business. I don't knock the hustle. One thing I've always said to people is I don't knock the hustle. Everybody is trying to do what they trying to do, but then stop getting mad at the choices that other people make to do the same thing. Now, if you want to call it out and be like, well, they're not fan first, they just want to sell you arguments that sell. Fair. call that shit out, because I don't think that helps them, because these are the same type of people that become the avatars of the whole community, and everybody has to be bundled in with the negative aspect of fandom and trolling, and we all do this, and we all deal with this just to win the argument. And so at the end of the day is what's most important. Like, again, for me, I don't knock how you get your bread. If you got a grift to get your bread, I can't knock your personal story. Isn't that what we've been talking about in all these political atmospheres about whose story and my truths and all this stuff? And if that's the case, then you know what? Do what you gotta do. But I say the best way to combat a lot of that, I'm not saying that I have the answers. I'm not saying you can't call it out. I think everybody has a right to do it. I was in the comment section and the gentleman was trying to come at me because I commented in the comment section. And all I said was, yo, a lot of this is going to stir up the same drama. And the funny thing is, if you pay attention to a lot of these channels, they say they don't want this. They want it out of fandom. So why are we actively pushing the line for it? You know, that's the part I don't understand. Now, to me, I think everybody deserves their perspective. Again, man, I mean, I'm not a fan of people that, and even in the fandom that mob up. If you a Snyder Cut fan, everybody got a mob on another fandom, and it's like, yo, we're adults, man. This ain't real gangster shit. Like, why are we bringing all of this extra shit to it, this antagonistic energy towards something that's supposed to be focused, instructed about the positivity of films? I think at some point we're going to have to really look at ourselves deep within and make these real adjustments, because at the end of the day, you can't go out and say, hey, these guys are doing this, these guys are doing that, all the while kind of doing what everything that you're saying that you call them, you say they're guilty of. You walk a real fine line. This is why I try my best. Like, I love talking to other channels, which I've been doing as of late, and I love the conversation. What I don't understand is the personal jabs. You know, it get real personal, and then when you go into the conversation, really ask direct questions, I find that people can't string together a cogent argument for why they feel so antagonistic about the situation. So they'll grab the idea first and say this is what's going on, so they're angry about that because that's been labeled that, and then they start arguing points against the label, and they haven't really asked themselves a question: does that label fit that person? But based on what someone else said, all right, now let's get to what the person said. And if the person cannot really tell you what he did that was racist, then we got to be careful from utilizing these type of points. Or if they're not saying anything that's actually sexist, then we can't really go and say it's sexist because XYZ. But I'm not afraid of people making the argument. What I'm a little bit annoyed with is that when you ask people direct questions, they can't really string together a direct answer for it. They have to look at other things that circulated it and orbited it and bundle it with who we're talking about. And it might not be fair. Like I tell a lot of people, man, just because someone's a dick doesn't mean that they're an asshole. And just because someone's an asshole doesn't make them a dick. You know what I'm saying? And we got to be very careful about what kind of labels we're throwing on the people, because then when we just throw labels around on everything that doesn't adequately suit it, especially when you ask someone direct questions, that they have to go into the mist and the weeds just to get to be right, and that's all you're trying to do, which I don't knock. I'm guilty of it. I have habits of trying to be right because no one wants to look wrong when you were so adamant about it. But you got to really start looking at it as, if I'm going to hang on to it when I know I don't have the answer, then all I'm doing is kicking the same dust around that I could not address in front of the naysayers directly. So what I did was I went into ad homs and all this other stuff to make these people look bad when, to me, it's not fair. If this is their argument, you don't need to make someone look bad. The argument will do that for them. I don't need that. You feel what I'm saying? And I think that that's what we're finding ourselves into. Things are getting a lot more personal than it needs to be. It's understood, but it starts to get more personal. And I don't think that's when it gets personal, that's when people start accepting leaps in logic and also searching only for information that validates this perspective, overlooking any information that may actually put the whole premise of their argument into question. Because at this point now, I need to win the argument. And this is something that all human beings do. That's why we have to be very careful. Me, I'm a firm believer, and I try to start off with the idea that I don't know everything. So I just ask the questions, because if one thing I am pretty decent at is asking the right or the appropriate questions to certain thoughts that are actually out there that people have now accepted wholesale. But when I ask direct questions towards it, then that's when people start, oh man, we look for roundabout reasons to make what I'm saying invalid, as opposed to really dealing with what I'm actually asking directly before we start getting off into the weeds about, oh, but you got to look at how it was back in the day and all this other nonsense, and forgetting that now that you're changing the direction of the conversation, whether you know it or not. And now we get wrapped up in corollaries and correlations, because that's the best place to make the argument, which isn't bad as a tactic in debates and creating rebuttals. But then you could be into the rebuttal infinite doing so, because you're only figuring out ways to rebut what they're saying, as opposed to really seeing that, can I really address what you said directly? And if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't know. I told someone online before, going back and forth on a topic, and I was like, I have to look it up. I didn't hear that, but I asked questions. Because if you're going to raise certain arguments, then if I could ask you a direct question, you should be able to pinpoint who, what, when, where, how exactly to the T, because this is where you're going with it. In the moment where we start getting antagonistic about it, because you can't get that direct answer. I have to go to these sideways questions and other things that was wrapped up around it that kind of moves the goalposts away from how direct the question was to begin with. So now you're more focused on arguing the correlations to get at the high point, where when the high point was so direct that you never needed to go through these other ways around, workarounds. You could have answered it directly. Then you could have explained yourself with the workaround. So if you don't know, you have to say, well, I ain't gonna lie, I don't know directly, but I do believe. And that I don't not belief systems, But what I will suggest is before we parrot beliefs, we have to be very careful with letting people know this is something that I believe. Can I really directly answer this and say it's this or that? Now to think about it, I don't know, but I do believe X, Y, Z. And then that's fine. You have a right to believe in what you want to believe. I mean, that's what we've founded this nation on, if that's what we're doing. Because a lot of people like to start throwing up, oh, freedom of speech. Yeah, all right. But you're not free of consequences. Yeah, you can say whatever you want, but that doesn't stop anyone from questioning it. Why should that stop anyone from putting a comment in the comments if it's not an insult? Oh, you're telling someone, you're trying to stop them from talking. No, what I'm saying is that if you're a person that's not with drama, then it would behoove you not to make dramatic conversations unless you're okay with it. And if you're okay with it, then you accept everything that comes along with it. And I think that's the higher point that people don't understand. And this is on both sides of the table. This is not a shot at anybody specifically, because I know some people are going to take it personal, and it's not about being personal. It's about being honest. And honesty is that we don't know. We only going off of what we're told by insiders, etc., and what the people that take part in. And then we have to do our own discernment to figure out who's accurate, who's not, based on the information that we have. And then we got to be very careful to make sure that we separate what's the actual facts and what's more conjecture. And I think that's what people are finding themselves in. It's an issue that I've always talked about with the changing of definitions to suit arguments, so that you don't have to retract your statement. All you have to do is redefine what words in the statement mean, so you never have to admit that it didn't appropriately define what you started to say to begin with. Because you really want to deal with another topic that's not directly tied to the conversation. And there's nothing wrong with it. We're all passionate creatures. And I think everybody has the right to figure it out on their own. Just like everybody has the right to go in the comments and say whatever they want to say. I'm not against trolls, but I do feel like trolls only ruin the family. You know what I'm saying? Because they're just saying stuff to start issues. And the moment you're playing these type of sucker games, then you get the type of prizes you get out of it. You get sucker prizes. This is just where we're at. And again, we at that point then forget to really discuss the films, like what went into the film, the choreography, the how to work in sync with studio mandates of the property that the studio owns. Because at some point we got to still acknowledge, because there's a lot of things that people will say, well, this is my channel, so I should do whatever I want. Well, this is their property. They have the right to do that too. I understand these things. I don't agree with a lot of the ideas, so I have no problem. And this is what the talk was about to discuss. Oh man, like, I wish they didn't do this. I wish they didn't do that. And then maybe even deal with what are the possible reasons why they're doing it. And unfortunately, because we've created the fandom to be a lot more personable, unfortunately, we're going to have to address elephants in the room that kind of tiptoe around some dramatic arguments around the fandom that I will have no problem addressing to discuss the point. But I don't want to overindulge to cloud this channel with negativity and then get mad that my channel is looked at as being negative. The moment you go outside, you jump off that porch and you say, I'm with it, I'm coming for everyone, then you got to accept everything that comes with it. And I think that's what a lot of people are not accepting. The moment you start trolling people, all limits are off. And you got to be very cognizant of how you do it. And then, hey, we do super chats off of it too. Well, I'm saying we in general, but I don't do the super chats because I'm not even up to that point. Like, no one's listening to me. But you open up super chats and you get money off of pushing the same narrative that at some point, less said about that, the better. But at the same time, I'm still always for the rights of people to speak their mind. And it goes both ways. That means that I get to say what I got to say. Just the same. We ain't got to agree, but I just want to put the thought out there so that we can have the larger conversation, or at best keep the conversation exactly where it needs to be. Because I think that the moment we start removing what the conversation should mean, then we're no different than the people that we're going against. We're just taking it on the same. We're looking at the algorithms. We're seeing what works. And at some point, we at the fandom have to accept the fact that we love this dramatic stuff. I have no problem saying I enjoy this shit. Yo, man, I was on one of these channels. Bruh, talked about this one young lady. She went so ham on Brie Larson. It just didn't make sense. And it was funny at the time to me. It was like, damn, man, this girl really hates her some Brie Larson. But after a while, it gets ridiculous. It's like, I see what you're doing. And a lot of these guys will admit, hey, that's what jerked the algorithm. Some have even admitted that they've been talking on films that they never even seen. to get so emotionally charged about, and because you want to talk about what others are talking about as opposed to what you see. And I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but you have to be extremely clear. And to be fair, a lot of those YouTube channels do go out of their way. Well, not all of them, but there's some that really will say, hey, I didn't see it, but from what I'm hearing about it, yada, 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 because they want to just get in the talk. And then they push the same narratives, which always seems funny that that's the narrative you've always had and never let go of. So even if you don't have all the information, you're still latching on to the same narrative because that's already in your mind. And that's the thing that I find more concerning, because then it messes with the fandom that these same people are saying that they want good notoriety from. You know, one gentleman told me on his show that the girl, that the young lady that took on the Snyderverse, or at least was one of the beginning people that created it, she's, at least up to that point, hopefully everything is different now, she's kind of been excommunicated from the fandom. Why is that? And I think it's for like weird reasons, and it's like, well, why? Because at the end of the day, this was about the Snyder Cut, and the Snyder Cut came out, so why would you be beefing with her? Because now you want this totalitarian attitude, and everybody wants their pound of flesh, because, oh, they said this about Zack Snyder, so boom, 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 boom. And it's like, well, that's how you feel. You got to also remember, there's a lot of people in the new regime, they're the new Zack Snyders now. And we're not even giving them a chance to give us some of these films. We was shitting on it before a lot of these came out. These are the facts. Are we any different than what happened to Zack Snyder? And don't get me wrong, to really talk about the Snyder Cut, we could go all the way to the very beginning, because he had a raw deal. He definitely did, and he needed vindication, and he got it. But now if they want to move on, they own the property. Now, to be fair, all we can do is exercise our rights. So we could do protests, the signatures, and we could do as much pushing the conversation into the mainstream as possible, a la hashtags. But we got to be careful about attacking the people behind it personally, if we have no direct quotes that says that they went at the fan base to begin with in the same manner that you did. And when I mean the same manner, like let's be for real, a lot of us go off. And if they say, hey, there's toxic fans, let's not act like you've never seen toxic fans. Like, even in your chats, like, I've seen them in a lot of people's chats. So it's, to me, it ain't no thing. It ain't no thing. It happens. That's part of the game. There's people that's following these hashtags, rabble rousing. Some of these guys, I honestly don't believe that they even are a part of any sort of fandom. They just know enough to go in and start beefs. And we have to, like, excommunicate those people without making big ass arguments. Dub them. Let's block them, get them up out the joint. Hey, this person is spreading some disrespectful stuff and not backing it up with facts. So everybody should be hitting them like, where's your facts? Where your sources? Where your sources? And if you can't bring up sources, I think we need to block you out of this fandom, buddy. Because if you're going to tell people they're spreading misinformation elsewhere, I hope we're doing our due diligence of making sure that we're not spreading false information everywhere. I mean, at the end of the day, this got to go both ways. Otherwise, we're cherry picking what we want and what we don't want, which now puts us right down the threshold of being very selective with our outrage. And that's the direction that you don't want to go, because eventually people will notice it, and now you set back the fandom a certain kind of way, especially when you make it a point to let yourself be seen as a leader of sorts within the fandom that you migrate and flock to damn near all the time, to the point where you just have like all the equipment with you. Like, in other words, like, we could change all of this up, and we can now, like, equip ourselves with new arguments to change the narrative. And I just think that we need not to go down these directions, because it puts us in a space where we become the villains of our own stories. And I want to spin this off into Matt Reeves' Batman, because I feel like Matt Reeves' Batman is getting a raw deal. Remember when he wanted to walk away from the project, and I think it's because they was going to try and find a way to tie this Batman with everything else that was going on. And slowly but surely, we were being led to know in the media that this is a Batman year 2, this is what we're doing, this is what we're focusing on, and fine, I'm with it, a self-contained Batman universe. But doesn't he have the same right to want to explore his universe as a creator the way he did? Because a lot of fans will now start to say, and I've seen it in some threads where people like, oh, you're our court justice, you shouldn't say anything. You know, yo, like, you need to follow everything we said because we set the standard, and and it gets out of hand. Because now, when you let a person talk long enough, they have a weird way to let you know what they're really about. And after a while of talking, it just sounds like you want to control the narrative. You don't want to talk about the narrative that's out there. You want to control the narrative. You want to be intellectually dishonest in certain places of the conversation in which people raised. And this is not fair to the other side, because you will want the other side to be that kind of fair with you. That's why I do my best to walk it down the middle when I approach these conversations. And if I didn't look something up, I have no problem explaining it to you. I didn't look that up, but I'm going off the conversation that's out there. Now, we could go in and have a deeper conversation in the comment section. I have no problem in doing it. That's just the point I'm trying to illustrate. You know, like, Matt Reeves wants to make his own universe and his own design and aesthetic that doesn't fit in the Snyder universe at present. Should he not be allowed to do the movie with the direction and vision that he wanted to, or should he play ball the way Zack Snyder did and possibly get us an issue where the choices the studios make to make changes that they thought that would have been most appropriate, whether it was for their pockets or the business? Bottom line, it was their thing to do. We could critique it, we could argue it, we could at them, but we got to be careful in cursing somebody out over a property that we never had no ends in creating. It doesn't matter if we're the audience or whatever you think the audience privileges should be with the studios based on the fact that they came and watched the film, because research would suggest that if you're going to go see the movie, you're going to see the movie regardless. And most people did. And so let's not act like we're not going to go see these movies. You know what I'm saying? So let's just try to focus on what the story could be, have a lot of fun, and pontificating on what could be the ideas. I'm cool if you got issues with certain things being depicted, man, please, man, give me your thorough analysis. I actually love these type of breakdowns because it makes it interesting to see what guys that are online and as YouTube creators that call themselves creators, how you fare with ideas and concepts in an atmosphere no one's a professional exactly in. We're just, random pundits, and we're just hoping that our takes can resonate with the audience good enough that we would be relevant to most topics based on what our vision and how we approach criticism of the film at hand. So for me, I look forward to seeing these new innovations of Batman. I have nothing against that. I am growing and growing to like it more and more and more. Even though if you ask me, which one would you want, a Ben Affleck Batman or Matt Reeves? I still say a Batfleck film. I was really interested in that Batman that we saw in BVS, as opposed to even Zack Snyder's Justice League. Even though he was a lot more streamlined in the shadow he cast, because he was very much, they were trying to sell him as something more scary, mythic and gothic, and I thought that was a very interesting approach that Zack Snyder was going for, and the fact that they really wanted to up the level of dialogue and make it more about theology which really was one of the things that really, like, for me, boom, I was totally with it, because I love conversations like that, especially if you can find interesting ways of having those conversations without getting beat over the head continuously with it. Now, some people may say, oh, there was a lot of Jesus iconographies in it. I could understand that. I didn't see that when watching in the beginning, at the time when I seen it. You might can notice those a little bit now, more after the fact, but that's okay too, because Zack Snyder didn't go out of his way to have interviews about it. It was in the film, so you could understand the idea, the philosophies of it's very possible this alien could be the end of the world for everyone today. No matter how much we like him and how much he saves us, all he has to do is just be pissed off and have one bad day. And we don't know what that would look like. But we got strangely close with the battle in Metropolis, and even if we see what happened in BVS, they had to take them to a secluded island so that they could have a fight with no casualties, except for, you know, Clark Kent. So again, I found a lot of ideas that Zack Snyder took to be very interesting, and I was interested in seeing, following this through line. But we're here now, and it seems like we may actually have 2 different, or maybe 3 different Batman properties working at the same time, and I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. And I think that we have to be very careful how we approach that, because the last thing you want to end up being is the same type of fans that hated on Zack Snyder for doing a movie that, and choices he made that we've seen in other Batman films, just to get rid of him because we don't like it. And then you want to kick over everybody else's toys and be like, that's okay. And then when people want to go tit for tat with you, people fall out and, oh shoot, where's my fainting couch? You feel me? And it start looking fugazi. And then the same people that are arguing for or against it, now, oh, they're trying to stop me from saying my opinions. Well, everybody has opinions, and you come at other people for their opinions, so why can't they come at you? Like, this is the game you set up. You created the rules, no one else. I don't come for anybody because I don't see the point. The channel my channel was never designed to be that kind of way. And I want to combat a lot of things that a lot of people want to combat. That's the main reason why I came to YouTube. And I want to be very careful with saying combat, because it gets a little bit more physical sounding than it needs to. But this is what I'm talking about, because people get seduced with saying, oh, I'm fighting against this, and then eventually it really becomes a fight. You know, and I'm not here to fight no one over a movie that I ain't getting no money on. You feel me? At the end of the day, this is still a business, and they got to find where the money is. So unless you're making real good video essays about following the money to attach with your argument, then it's just you just having just chatting like I am right now. I might pull from certain sources that everyone is very well aware of, but at the same time, I'm not sitting here trying to sell this as a video essay. This is totally holistically just a perspective that I have that I feel like is more in line with me being consistent to my top premise. I do want to see the creators have a lot more say in the films that they got putting out. But I'm not against studio oversight, because this is their product. If I have a character, and I don't make movies, but I want to protect the integrity of the character, then I'm going to say this is the kind of movie that I'm going to make, and I'm going to stand by it. Now, if no one stands with you on it, you want to make a heel-toe pivot because you're trying to make this money, you have a right to make that decision, as long as you have a right to. But you got to also remember, when you butcher people's shit, you're fucking up their name. That's why Zack Snyder did. My whole issue was, outside of the obvious, was more, well, I feel him, like, because his name will ever be tied to that movie that no one likes now. Because in the beginning, people was kind of feeling it was okay, it was cool. Now people hate it. Fine. I don't want my name attached to that. Like he said, if you ain't gonna let me put out this movie the way I want to, I'm not gonna put it out. That's fair. Because everybody really wanted whatever you could put out. He was like, no, I'm gonna stick to my guns. And eventually he got what he wanted. And as it seems via Micah E. Sutton, we, the fans, may seem to have, the fans of the Snyder Cut, seem to have now elevated the conversation to a different DCEU cinematic universes, which is dope. My whole thing that I want to make sure of is that we don't keep pushing negative rhetoric into the fandom that takes away from the fun and the geekdom of revisiting our childhood experiences when we used to read these comics as kids. Before we got into the beefs and all of this shit, we supposed to enjoy this like kids on Christmas every time we put this in our headphones. A lot of us are just older, man. Let's be for real, man. Most of the people that follow this and are like 30 plus. If not, I'll be honest with you, I think there are more people that's 40 plus following this and pushing all these negative aspects. But at the end of the day, it's mostly adults. And my thing is, adults, we teach kids not to be this kind of toxic. It's just a movie at the end of the day. Yeah, we got a lot of deep attachment, social and personal, to these characters for a lot of reasons that are valid in your personal life. But you can't use that personal energy to shut out anybody that's getting what they want with their franchise. Now, if the argument is how are these characters true to the sense of who they are, and were there some adequate changes, then that's another conversation. And we got to be very careful and smart how we set up the conversation so we can have that conversation. Like, is this, I don't like what they did. I can't knock it because Matt Reeves or whoever has a right to make the film that they were hired to do. But at the end of the day, I didn't like it. One person had to remind them, like, yo, some of these guys you hate, they were hired to do exactly what you said you hate. How are you mad at them specifically when that's what they were selected specifically for? They're not changing anything. They are taking on their job. Now, we can hope they lose it. That's a little fucked up. I don't know how to hope someone loses their job that just not too long ago got it. But I'm also, I'll be real with you, I'm not going to pour out no little liquor if some people lose their job and it makes it more advantageous for what I would want. But what I would do is not insult them to it. I'll be honest with you. I think he had a right to do it, but now enough people has shifted the tides of where this fandom would go. And now, even though those people that were just now getting their shot, they're into question whether or not they're appropriate for the new direction. And even on some level, if you're okay with studios just redirecting, because they redirected before when it didn't work, so all those other people that are anti-Zack Snyder, they have to adhere to the same argument as well. Well, now they're pivoting back to where they once left, or they're trying to expand the brand to something that serves other variables of revenue that they're seeking to acquiesce, especially during the period of time that we're at. And people are not paying attention to that. And I think that the more that we do our best to pay attention to it, we don't fall victim to becoming the same people that we're arguing against. And I hope that really makes sense to what I'm trying to explain. Because I'm not trying to shortchange no one. I ain't trying to disrespect anybody's specific point of view. Nor am I like trying to take agency away from anyone. All these big ass words that people want to use to make something as mundane as the film community more political than it ever needed to be, so we could find ourselves in toxic arguments based on stuff that no one gets money over and no one owns. Just like people will argue, well, you can't say that on my favorite YouTuber's channel, but it's the comment section is open. You saying you're against censorship, then why would you censor me for commenting in the comment section? That doesn't mean that I cursed at or disrespected the YouTuber. It just means that I had a comment. My comment might not have been the most favorable, but it was a comment that wasn't insulting. And that's what I'm trying to bring back to fandom. We can have great personal discussions and have real good fun with the debates without having to mudsling about movies. Man, we're all grown-ups, man. Like, you gonna thug it out over a film? Like, come on, my bro. Like, shit. Like, don't get me wrong. We could be real passionate about this. Like, I could go in about certain properties. Like, I could talk about Power Rangers and how they disrespect my favorite Ranger, the Black Ranger, who happens to be the Black Ranger. You know what I'm saying? Which it wasn't. And just before anyone could ever say anything, I didn't know he was black. I actually thought he was the leader when I first seen it. And I loved the suit because black is my favorite color. And to be honest, it was the color of my favorite lion in Voltron. But I forgot, the guy that piloted the Black Lion, he didn't wear red in the original inception of the film that I remember watching growing up before all the other variations where, because Power Rangers was out, they decided to make sure that these characters matched their robots, because it didn't make sense that red piloted the black. You know what I'm saying? From the rip. And he should have wore Sven's outfit from the very beginning. Like, you know, Sven shouldn't have been piloting the blue. And then you got a new incarnation where they make Sven the leader, but they hint at how Keith takes over. And I love that. This is how you merge two ideas and concepts that they tried to fix, but when you're trying to update it for a broader audience as well as the mature audience that grew up with it, you're going to have to explain some of these things. And how they explained it was that Keith didn't pilot the Black Lion first. He piloted the red, but he had a connection with the black that no one could understand, and that's gonna set him up down the line to take control of the Black Lion. And then you can have a whole season or two without Sven, and then bring Sven back to take the lion back, or be humble enough to say, I'll pilot blue. And then now you've started where you started to get these characters to what we remember, and that's creative writing. Me, I just didn't like how the Black Ranger, even though I understand that because he's not in the, he's now, I think, part of the union, SAG. I guess that's why they take liberties with his likeness. That's why on the, Lightning Collection, he is probably one of those characters that looks absolutely nothing like his character. And that really bothered me as a personal fan of this character. And I could go in about it separately about how I feel, but I'm not going to carry the big jug of water making it more antagonistic than I thought. I came up with a concept that might be more adequate to repair what I felt was damage to the branding of the Zack Taylor character that I noticed in the comic book series. Now, I haven't read all of it, so I have to be honest. I followed a lot of breakdowns and people that basically damn near read through it online, and then I started buying the books and reading it. And there's certain things that are a little mildly true to the character, but there's a lot of things that to me just dumps him down to the point of him being just ridiculous. And now it's like, it just seems like this is one whole rehab series to elevate the Red Ranger to Tommy level. And we can't get enough of Tommy, but why can't we explore a lot of the other Rangers that were there and develop them into more interesting characters, because they were interesting to individual people? Why don't they have their the one stories? Why can't they? Why can't they? And I found it interesting that Zack Taylor, he was one of those characters that they went out of the way to, in a lot of certain books, they dumbed them down. I'm going to keep it simple. I didn't like it But I had to be very careful about how I presented it online as well in certain fandoms, because I didn't want to be the guy just hating on Tommy. I like Tommy's character, but we don't need to sacrifice Zach's character just to sell us Tommy. We don't need to sacrifice Zach Taylor to satisfy Jason. People already feel like he's the best Red Ranger. There's no real reason to have to go out of your way to say, like, Zach got detention, but Jason had stood up for me. Why you had to stand up for you? You couldn't stand up for yourself? Like, you're the Black Ranger, bro. You were second in command before Tommy was even a thought. Even Rita considered getting you before Tommy as they revisit the story. So at what point is this consistent to the story that you've already written? For me, it felt like he was a stepping stone for any character to sell some other character's story you were more interested in selling. Like you went out your way to make Jason's dad look like Jason, look like a strong character, and then, well, his dad is just bald with a big ass stomach. Which is, the funny thing is he is probably one of the most well kept in terms of his youthfulness. That isn't my personal consensus. It's what I read. Yo, Zach looks real good for his age. So if he looks real good, why couldn't you make his father look like him the way you did Jason? Why he had to be overweight? Like at least give him a strong pop. So at least he could have that, as opposed to somehow devolve into this jealous dude of Tommy, to this, just to upsell other characters that we don't need to be sold on. Because how many times Tommy has been leveled up and he has a Master Morpher? People are even putting King Tyranno. That's not even a real character, but they're building him up because fans want to see their favorite Ranger get bigger. So my thing is, just like we went out of your way to level up Kimberly, and they did a little bit more with Tui, that I love. I love that they did. It was like, but Zach was just, he can't get a real strong story. He can't be seen as a second in command as he once was. Even the conversation that they had with Zordon about, like, why did you select me? There was no come back around to make every change that you decided to do to make sense to what you've already started, that I would argue I didn't even agree with. But if we're going to go this direction and say that he was selected to be the first Green Ranger, it has to be a reason. So why can't we elevate Zach up as a real fighter? Much better than what people have ever expected. So it makes sense why he was seen to be before Tommy ever had an opportunity of becoming the Green Ranger and also take it to the next level. And I think that a lot of people did not care because, like I said, he was a throwaway character, and I felt that the character deserved a little bit more because of what the character was from the beginning. He wasn't like a side joke character. He was funny. He was charismatic. He was the Zach Morris. He wasn't the jock, but he was a cool kid of school. So why aren't we leaning into that and that confidence without having to take away from the character? They did some cool things, I will not admit, but it just took away from the character. I said all of that to say that I'm not going to go and come at other people over it. You see, I got long-winded on that, and I really like the character, but I'm not going to go and come at anyone for it and disrespect the writers per se. But I'll make a logistical argument, and I'll bring the things that I seen in the book. Now, unless someone could say, hey, they did this in the book, because I read the book, but not as much as everyone else. I have to be honest. I can't follow the comics to the level that other people do, but I do follow the comics via a lot of YouTube channels that talk about it, so I'm kind of abreast on it. And that being said, just seeing that made me really think about, like, dag man, I hope somebody can do something with that character the way they tried to level up the Green Ninja Ranger with Tommy's shield, and we've leveled up other characters, and we can't really explore them on a deeper level to show why they were leveled up to begin with, so we can add more contextual design to these characters that others liked. Because I mean, Jason has those stories and all of those. Tommy has a wealth to go through, and now we're finally doing something with or did something with Kim. Why can't we? And we've started something with Tui's character, which I loved. Then why can't we take it a step further with Zach, with Billy, and then the other characters that came, and snatch out other characters that never had an opportunity to really showcase how important they were to their specific teams, to at least have centered stories for them that can actually bring in a lot of other characters that never got a focus to begin with in the fandom, that a lot of other people would like to see a lot of resolutions with, or see a lot more done with these characters, as opposed to just focusing on red and pink and green characters. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying what I think. I say all that to say, but I'm not coming at nobody. I ain't like wilding on nobody. You feel me? This is a geek channel. I'm having fun with the geek shit. You dig? So let me know, man. I got on long enough. I didn't want to go an hour, but we shot an hour. And this is fun. And you already know this is the point of it. I just wanted to have just the talk, no filler, and you could get a better idea of who I am in terms of as a quote-unquote film critic and a film pundit, so you can actually see the train of thought that I have, where it comes from, and how I try my best to be consistent with it. And where I'm not consistent, I'll just be honest, because everybody has their personal bias, and everyone should have it. And I'm interested in any conversations people want to have with me. And if you want me to make a video to discuss my point of view on certain things, man, let's do that, man. I want us to do it. I want us to have fun. I'll answer every question, but know one thing: I'm not here to talk drama. I'm here to have the talk, have the conversation, and I'm snatching out all the beefs in it, because like, it's movies, bro. These are movies. Like, what we gonna do? We gonna thug it out over a movie that nobody got bread on? Like, come on, man. Ain't nobody got snaps on these movies. You dig it? So why we making a scene out of this? You feel me? And that's the bigger conversation I want us to have. I want us to be that's passe, that's played out. You feel me? We bring conversations and arguments, and we go back and forth, and we have the right to agree to disagree and go in our separate corners. There's nothing wrong with saying I need to do more research because I didn't know about that part. I'm quick to say that. If I don't know something, I say I don't know nothing about that part, so I gotta look that up. And I've done that on a public panel. I didn't know about that. That's what you're saying. Gotta look it up. Still haven't, which is bad on my bad, because I've been meaning to do it. It's always been in the back of my mind, but we all got different lives. And I get it. We all are quick to want to engage the topic, but let's be fair and respectable to the topics that we're addressing without having to go there because we don't like your take. You dig? You ain't gotta like my take, but you can address my take. And you can tell me you don't like it, so I can see the venom in why you feel away. But I don't need to get called any old kind of names over it. It's movies. No one knows. Like, we only know what we've been told by the scoopers. Excuse me. So it's all about following the best scoopers. Me, I'm past that. I want to have the actual conversation these scoops might spark, whether it's true or not, so we can have real good fun about breaking down films. So those that are interested in the film conversation can find different ways of it communicating to other people the directions that they would have chosen and why. And I think that makes for even better videos, better response videos, because then now we can really deal with what's being said, as opposed to add on to get personal. It's just unnecessary. But with that being said, man, I said more than enough on this episode 2 of Just the Talk, and I'm just bringing just the talk. And you already know what the deal is. Leave it in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going and pumping. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time, and as always, till I have a better outro. Chill.